The following is a program by the Red Ant Collective, a voice for revolutionary Marxism from inside Imperialist Australia. In today's episode, a recording of a talk by Red Ant Collective member Nick D, entitled Australia's Imperialist Foreign Policy, given at our Socialist Education Conference held in Sydney earlier this year.
Politically, Australia and all the other exploiter nations will do anything necessary to keep the world divided between rich and poor nations. War, invasion, coups, IMF debt traps, trade wars, embargoes and sanctions. These are all tools used by the imperialist countries. Australian foreign policy has always been determined by its membership within a small club of imperialist powers that dominate the world economy, as well as by its junior status within this club. While putting the interests of Australian capital at the forefront, it has had to do so from a position of relative weakness vis-à-vis the large powers, especially the United States. An example of this is Australia's membership in the Quad, an alliance aimed at maintaining the maximum embeddedness and integration of the US military. While Australia is indeed a junior partner, it remains a powerful and constant source of imperialist oppression over nations in Asia and the Pacific. The Australian ruling class supported the New Order dictatorship in Indonesia, as well as the brutal invasion and occupation of Timor-Leste. It has been involved in many acts of imperialist aggression, such as the invasion of Vietnam, as well as interventions in the Middle East and Afghanistan, including 2 invasions of Iraq. It also plays an ongoing policing role and interference in the affairs of Pacific neighbours, including Australia's former colony, Papua New Guinea. These are all measures aimed at securing the stability of the imperialist system and the ability of the Australian ruling class to systematically extract super profits from the mass exploitation and misery of workers inside global south countries. A complicated world situation has now developed, where both socialist and left-wing governments, mostly in Latin America, as well as capitalist governments outside the imperialist core, such as China and Russia, are facing increased hostility from the rich countries. Since around 2011, there's been a shift in focus by the imperialist countries to massively escalate their hostility towards these countries, and in particular China. This was put bluntly in President Barack Obama's address to the Australian Parliament, where he said, "After a decade in which we fought 2 wars that cost us dearly in blood and treasure, the United States is turning our attention to the vast potential of the Asia-Pacific region." Under Trump, this became official policy, as war on terror was replaced with great power conflict. The 2017 US National Security Strategy stated, "After being dismissed as a phenomenon of an earlier century, great power competition has returned. They, i.e. China and Russia, are contesting our geopolitical advantages and trying to change the international order in their favour." End quote. After years of escalating hostility and warmongering, the anti-China hysteria is peaking in Australia. The media and political class tell us day after day that China is the aggressor and our common enemy. The resulting Cold War atmosphere is being used to justify massive military spending and to silence dissent. It is crucial to point out that while Australia has been involved in various foreign invasions in recent decades, China has not and cannot invade a rich country like Australia. Not once are we told that it is the rich imperialist countries who have completely surrounded China with military bases that are the aggressors. Most recently, the Morrison government, supported and then continued by the Australian Labor Party, formed AUKUS, a military alliance with the US and the UK in a blatantly aggressive move aimed at China. A hallmark of this deal is to build a fleet of nuclear-propelled submarines in Australia, which will cost well over $100 billion. To put this ludicrous spending into perspective, the estimated cost of just one submarine is the same as 560 schools, 40,000 houses, or 33,750 new jobs. AUKUS will also undo decades of work to keep Australia nuclear free, besides the reactor at Lucas Heights, has the potential to expose whole communities to toxic radiation, and will greatly increase the risk of nuclear proliferation across the region. The Australian ruling class is trying to take us down a path that could easily lead to war. If a war were to break out, millions of ordinary people will suffer, and there's a real chance it will escalate to nuclear war. The AUKUS deal needs to be stopped now, and we must continue to oppose Australia's aggression and warmongering against China. To make sure these imperialist policies are carried out, and that the mass exploitation of global south workers goes smoothly, the ruling class tries to prevent ordinary people here realising their comradeship with exploited workers everywhere. We need to start building links with progressive forces both inside and outside the imperialist core, beginning to promote a deepening commitment to solidarity with all oppressed and exploited people. We need to smash the idea that the interests of the Australian working class and the interests of the imperialist ruling class are one and the same. The long-term interests of the Australian working class don't lie in a few crumbs that might fall off the table of the imperialist bourgeoisie. They lie in overthrowing this rotten imperialist system that keeps billions of working and oppressed people in chains.